took some time off this summer. I visited my son, one of my sons in New York. Took a short trip to the west coast of Florida. I'd never been. But for the most part, really, I relaxed and reflected on returning here to be with you. I thought, how do I need to prepare to return to be here with you, this congregation? You know, this time of year, I don't know about you, but I think many people are thinking something like that, reflecting on how they'll prepare for their children returning to school, or perhaps the increased congestions on the roadways in Florida, or Miami in particular. Or prepare returning to the congregation. You know, some people take a break from coming to church on during the summer and come back in the fall. Or whatever it feels like you might be returning to. Some of us still might be thinking about how to be able to return to a world where COVID exists and monkeypox is spreading. Preparing to return to something we are familiar with is one thing. But things feel kind of unfamiliar right now, at least to me. Maybe they do to you as well. How do you feel returning or coming here for the first time, maybe returning to a faith community for the first time in this building? Some of you have not been here for the past couple of years due to COVID, and coming back into the world or back into this community may feel a little unfamiliar or uncomfortable. And how do you prepare for that? And in the wider community, with laws restricting abortion, with new laws negatively impacting the LGBTQ plus community, particularly young people that are LGBTQ plus, and with increased gun violence and mass shooting, with all the repercussions of climate change and all the increase in hate crimes, hate speech, it kind of feels like a very different world out there. Or maybe a world we're simply seeing a little more clearly now. How do we prepare for something like that? Martha, my lovely wife, and I were watching a commercial the other day on television which mentioned the crisis we are facing. I think the commercial was about financial management services. But as Martha and I listened to the commercial and reflected on it, we wondered almost simultaneously what crisis they were talking about. Martha then commented, well, with all the crises in the world right now, they may have intentionally not specifically mentioned a crisis. The commercial could be used indefinitely because there was always some kind of crisis that we could put in that blank. So I wonder, as you do whatever you do to prepare to return after this summer to your late summer, early fall routines, whatever they may be, you can fill in the blank as to what you're returning to the world, to the faith community, to whatever your life might be. Routines, a school, seasons change, not here in Florida, but other places. Whatever has been and whatever will be for you. And being between that place from what has been to what will be is a challenging place to be. It's sort of an in-between space. Not here, whatever here is, for much longer, and not quite there either. A sort of a state of both and. A friend of mine, Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Karen Herring, wrote a book that was just published this summer titled Trusting Change, Finding Our Way Through Personal and Global Transformation. Now, Karen has been for many, many years writing about writing. In particular, writing from a spiritual perspective. She's encouraged people and taught people through workshops and other means how to use writing as a spiritual practice. I've taken some of her courses and read some of her books. And this summer at General Assembly, which is our yearly denominational meeting, I took a class from her on this new book, Trusting Change. She said as she initially started thinking about this topic, change, she thought, there's been so much written about it. What do I have to say? But here's the thing. Using her own experience and reflection, she did come up with 10 skills for living in the threshold of change. And she also, in her book, comes up with some spiritual practices and inspirations to help us connect with our inner wisdom. In other words, she offers a process to aid us in preparing for whatever the future may bring as we live in that liminal space of in-between. A process that is constructive, growth-oriented, and that builds resilience and wisdom. Now, I'm not going to tell you all those 10 strategies. If you're interested, I encourage you to get the book. But also, I'm in process with it myself. I find it a way of being very reflective. And it helps me in my discerning how I can be here with you. And if you pick up the book, keep in mind it's not a read-through book, it's a workbook. It's something that you read each chapter and spend time with and explore within yourself. But what I wanted to share with you this morning was some of her premises and ideas. So here are some of her foundational premises. First of all, she says, change happens. It is part of our existence. We've heard that in many other religious traditions, particularly Buddhism. Personally and in the world, things change. Biologically, sociologically, psychologically, ecologically, spiritually, things change. And often in this process of change, these changes are, in her words, she says, gooey. I might say messy. And many times we can experience in this process what she calls trembling vibrations. I might call anxiety or insecurity. As we move from what was to what's coming to be. And many of us, as we're approaching change, feel some resistance. I remember that when I experienced my call to ministry, I had much in the way of that call. I remember thinking I can't do this. Or I'm not smart enough to be a Unitarian Universalist minister. They're way smarter than me. Or I don't have the money to go to seminary. Or I'm older and I'm going to school. I don't think I can do the work that they have and memorize and take tests and all that stuff. I can't tell anyone I have this call or they're going to expect me to become a minister. And what if I don't make it through seminary or internship or ministerial fellowship? Part of me was adamant that I was not going to be able to do this, and that it would resist in any way possible that I tried to move in this direction, because that part didn't want to give up my comfortable existence, my successful career, didn't want my life, my relationships, anything to change. I was, as Karen would call it, balking. Karen suggests that there are many ways to manage this balking and instead trust change. Now, I can intellectually understand that trusting change is probably a more positive and productive way of facing change. But tell that to my feelings. I don't know how you experience change, but each time I face particularly a major change, it's very difficult to trust that change. To trust that I will come out intact on the other side. Or if I do come through that change, it's hard for me to let go of the feeling that there's going to be some kind of negative or even, at least to me, might seem traumatic consequence. I know that's irrational. I know I have successfully moved through many changes, major changes in my life. And I know in most cases I will experience personal growth as I move through these changes. Yet my first reaction is often to balk. Perhaps for you as well, you've experienced that balking. But the balking doesn't stop me. Well, I guess you can tell because I'm actually here and a minister, so that is some indication. But I wish my initial response to change isn't to balk. So how do we manage change or prepare for change in a way that we might trust change? Whether we're talking about normal changes in routine or more unexpected or profound changes like in the world, whether it be a positive change or a negative one, or perhaps a more complicated change, more thought-provoking change, like changes that you go through that you might think are going to be positive, but in it you find out really aren't or not entirely. Or that you thought were going to be negative, but weren't, or at least not entirely. I invite you for a moment. Think about a change that you've gone through. Bring it to mind. Hold it in that space inside of you for a moment. Think about how you embody that change. How you maybe listen to your body's wisdom as change happened. If you did. Or perhaps as you're bringing it to mind, you might notice where you feel change in your body. And how do you interpret or make meaning of that feeling within you when you reflect on it, when you attend to it? And as you hold on to that change in your mind, think for a moment, how has engagement with others, friends, family, maybe this congregation, how was that for you as you were engaging change? Did you feel supported? Did you notice that there was a ripple effect? As that change moved through you, and it bounced off those in your life, and that bounced back to you, and around and around. What did your world and your place in it look like, feel like, as that ripple passed through you and those in your community? Those friends, family, congregation. And what was it like after that ripple subsided? Were there aspects of your personal life, your social life, your work, even your faith community that seemed profoundly different? Karen writes about what we can do in these in-between times, between what was and what will be. She says what we need to do is create a chrysalis space. A space for self-reflection, for embodiment, for embracing community. So, the meditation we did today, breathing in, there is a love, breathing out, holding us. That is an exercise that can be used to help you create a chrysalis space. Turning your attention within yourself for reflection, using your breathing for embodiment, connecting to the love that is around you, that holds you, that allows you to embrace yourself and embrace those in your community. The meditation was just a simple example of how to create a chrysalis space. But she goes deeper and invites us to go deeper. And so I have decided that I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to really engage with Karen to create chrysalis space by going through her exercises and her practices. And so I wonder if any of you would like to join me. You see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage with this book and these exercises, and I'm going to do that at least the first time in our Building Your Own Theology class. And anyone who would like to join us can join us. I believe, after looking and exploring and considering this journey, that I don't want to do it alone. I want to invite others to join with me. I believe this process will allow me to prepare for that in-between space so that I will become more authentic and return to my deepest self and return differently to this community. Because, my friends, we are living in in-between times. And I need something for me to help me to be in the in-between time and to minister to you who are also in in-between times. I want to close today with a meditation. It's called Beginning to Begin by psychotherapist and self-help author Gunya Norris from her book Inviting Silence, Universal Principles of Meditation. And as I read this, I thought, she has an idea of how to begin creating chrysalis space. So let me share it with you. Can we recognize that now and then there comes an inner sense, a fleeting thought, a little yearning to live our lives differently? We don't know what this means or what it requires. We shake these notions off like a dog shakes off water, and then we go about our business. But the longing continues. Could we sense that this longing is not a lack or something worse, some kind of fundamental flaw in us? Can we receive it as an invitation instead? A calling, a small voice inviting us home, back to our truer self. My friends, this shift in thought can move mountains. It can let us begin to begin.